And the market has left no doubt about the economic impact of President Trump's Liberation Day tariffs that he announced on Wednesday, with the Dow dropping more than 1,000 points since the market opened this morning. Despite this shocking number from Wall Street, Mr. Trump expects these tariffs to bring about the best for the American economy. Take a listen.
Jobs and factories will come roaring back into our country, and you see it happening already. We will supercharge our domestic industrial base. We will pry open foreign markets and break down foreign trade barriers. And ultimately, more production at home will mean stronger competition and lower prices for consumers. This will be indeed the golden age of America. It's coming back, and we're going to come back very strongly.
Now, despite the president calling this a so-called golden age, a poll yesterday said that more than half of Americans have concerns about the direction of the economy. For more on what these tariffs mean for our country, let's bring in Pete Sepp, president of the National Taxpayers Union. And Pete, your group's research has shown the cost of living is the #1 concern for people. We know the speculation about where the costs will go if these and once these tariffs are implemented, but how will the tariffs impact that?
Well, tariffs are little more than a tax on goods brought into the United States. The exporters of those goods don't actually pay them. The importers do here on our side of the ocean. Those costs get passed along to consumers in the form of higher prices, or if we're talking about certain raw materials or even finished goods that go into factories and the like. Well, those factories either pass along their additional costs, or they delay hiring plans, or they disappoint shareholders. So these tariffs, when we wage a trade war, we're really shooting at ourselves. And sure, we can all hope, and I sure do hope for the sake of the American people, that these stock market shocks and other things we're experiencing right now are temporary, but we need to start planning for additional policy responses that will stabilize our economy and help it grow in the future. There's a lot that Washington needs to do. They need to cut back on these tariffs, but there are other things in tax and budgetary policy that need to get moving now.
Yeah, Pete, we've already seen a few car manufacturers announce that they will be raising prices because of these tariffs. Now, what happens next for the American economy if these tariffs stay? They've been on again, off again for so long, but as it stands now, we can only go with the assumption that they will stay. We've already seen what it's done to the market today.
Well, if they do stay, don't look for really rosy inflation reports this year. And in turn, we shouldn't look for any additional reductions in interest rates. I mean, those were already on pause. They're going to be in a deep freeze for quite a while if we get the inflationary effects that many people are worried about with these tariffs. And it's important to remember, as our economy absorbs them, there are all kinds of costs we haven't even figured on yet. All of the various tariff rates and exemptions on certain goods, businesses are figuring that out right now. It could take them quite a lot of time, quite a lot of effort and money just to comply with the new tariff regime. And when we're talking about doing things like expanding factories, I've already been hearing from folks out west who plan to build factories, and they're saying, wait a minute, I have to import special machinery in order to do that. I'm going to have to put those plans on hold. So how is that conflicting with the president's very admirable goal of boosting our economy here at home, bringing back domestic manufacturing? You got to have a plan for that, and just slapping tariffs on so many goods coming into the United States doesn't necessarily constitute a plan.
Yeah, and as we heard yesterday, that tariff is a 10% baseline tariff on nearly every trading partner of the U.S.'s. Now, we want to get a little bit to tax policy. Yesterday, the president touted a supposed plan to reduce taxes and offer more deductions for U.S. taxpayers. Your group advocates for better tax policy. What does that look like in today's political climate?
Yeah, the president's absolutely right to stress the need to prevent a $4 trillion plus tax hike that's going to occur if the great 2017 tax relief law he signed is allowed to expire at the end of this year. So that's job one. Job two is to get federal spending under control. We're talking a lot about national security these past few days with the imposition of these tariffs. Well, our national debt at 36 trillion plus and headed further north is a national security threat in and of itself. Congress and the president simply have got to get more serious about paring back federal spending. The bill that the House passed provides $2 trillion of spending restraint, but even that doesn't on net cut the federal budget over the next 9 years. It simply slows the rate of spending down. We're going to have to make that the minimum effort here in Washington, D.C., and figure out other ways to address some of the biggest drivers of the debt.
You were just talking about cutting spending. It was one of the platforms the president ran on leading up to November's election. Is that happening 3 months into his term the way that your organization thought it would?
Well, there are some very admirable activities going on with DOGE to identify waste, fraud, and abuse in government, and the executive branch can take actions on its own, like staff realignments or ending certain contracts or instituting better controls over how money is spent. But it also is going to take Congress into this process in a very deep way. We need to look at the nation's biggest entitlement programs, not only for waste, fraud, and abuse, but having an honest conversation on how we're going to preserve these benefits in the future. After all, the X-date, bankruptcy date for Social Security's trust fund and Medicare Part A's trust fund is coming up in less than a decade. What are we going to do now to plan for that? We can't wait until 1 year before everything goes belly up and hope to reform it. We have to start doing those things.
Yeah, these are concerns that Americans have had for a long time, knowing these various deadlines are coming up. Now, Pete, we have about a minute and a half left. I have one last question for you. I'm going to give you a magic wand, and if you had to make the economy better over the next 2 months, how exactly would you do it?
The first thing I would do is pull back on these blanket tariffs and start examining country by country who is doing the worst by the United States, who has the most discriminatory tax policies. Start there. Meanwhile, here at home, I would get moving to make sure we put into place the tax relief that's about to expire for American families and businesses. Then I would say, with Congress and the administration, $2 trillion was the amount of spending restraint the House of Representatives recently passed. How can we do even better than that over the next 9 or 10 years to make sure we're sending the right signal to investors around the world that the United States is getting its fiscal house in order? Those things need to happen very, very soon. That's what's going to make the United States great again, like the president wants. He's got a lot of great ideas, tearing down trade barriers, reducing the deficit, making sure taxpayers are respected in the system. But he's got to be able to keep a focus on all of these policies, not just tariffs.
Yeah, we'll see if taxpayers back his plan, because right now there is a lot of uncertainty and trepidation. Pete Sepp, president of the National Taxpayers Union, thank you for joining us here and giving us your insight.
My pleasure.